Let's see if I'm live. Hold on. My StreamYard is updated, so as you can see, you don't see any StreamYard label over here. First, I want to check if this is working. So one moment, please. If anyone is here, let me know if you can hear me in the live chat. Can people hear me? Let me know. Good. As I always do, I'll wait the first 5 minutes for people to come in. So right now there are 3.5 minutes more before I'm going to start. So you can wait 3.5 minutes. You can get some drinks or get your Bible, whatever you want. Within 3.5 minutes, we're going to start the class. I don't know how long this live stream will be. I want to keep around 40 minutes. But again, it's Holy Spirit that decides eventually. And the topic of the day is observing versus seeing. There's a very big difference between observing and seeing. I'm going to talk about it again to highlight this because it's very important. For this live stream, we're going to use Matthew chapter 15, verse 14 till 16 as a lead. Now, I'm going to post in the live chat for you, so you don't have to look it up for yourself. Okay. Yes. There it is. I think the verse was too long, so we divided into 2 comments instead of just one. But the verse over there, Matthew 15, verse 14 till 16, you can read it now while you wait before the class begins. Are you all up to date with my latest live streams? Let me know, please. Okay. I want to keep my live streams around 1 hour long, maximum 1.5 hours, so that people can watch them back and take notes. So that's why I always say I want to keep it short. So I don't want to make it long. If it goes around 1 hour and a quarter, I always tend to stop them. There was one exception when I made another live with Forever here or Nairon. That one was a bit long, but my common live streams are between 1 hour, are between 40 minutes and 1 hour and 15 minutes. So, okay. Yes, the class has begun. So for those who are here, you're right on time. I'm going to read the verse for you. Matthew chapter 15, verse 14 till 16. And this was something Christ said. Let them alone. They be blind leaders of blind. And if the blind leads the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. Then answered Peter and said unto him, Declare unto us this parable. And Jesus said, Are you also yet without understanding? Now, the context of what Christ was saying here has to do with the scribes and Pharisees who were actually devil worshippers in disguise teaching the masses. Now, when devil worshippers teach you, of course you're going to be deceived. Of course you're going to be misled. But Christ was not aiming too much at the scribes and Pharisees. Christ told them, let them alone, or in modern English, leave them alone. So don't bother with them, because they're blind leaders of the blind. Hold on a minute. Let's use our natural understanding here. If someone is blind, so they can't see for some reason, they need someone who can see to guide them. Someone that's blind can never lead someone that's blind. Physically, that will not work, because the one that's leading is blind, so he will fall in a ditch or will walk against a wall, or if it's in traffic. Let's say you have traffic and you need to cross the road. It's a very busy crossroads with a lot of buses and vehicles passing through. If you have a blind individual have to cross that road, you better have someone who can see, can guide the blind individual. Because if you have two blind individuals, one leading another blind individual, both will be hit by a car, or both will endanger themselves and the whole traffic. Now, that's obvious. Yet Christ was saying that there are blind leading the blind. He was not talking about literal blindness. He was talking about spiritual blindness. Christ was saying that there are people The laptop just crashed. So that's why I wasn't able to continue, but now I continue. Let me start again. Praise the Lord that StreamYard is working well. Can you all hear me now? Can you all hear me now? That I'm back in StreamYard. Okay. So where was I? I was saying that when you have blind people who are not even aware they're deceived, guiding other people, it's going to end wrong. That's how simple it is. Now, how do you know that it's a blind individual leading you? There must be some way you can recognize that, right? Well, it's not always that clear when it's a blind one leading you. So, in order to know where it's a blind individual that's leading you, you have to be able to observe what you're dealing with. Not just see what you're dealing with, observe what you're dealing with. Seeing is just your visual sense. You can notice what's in front of you, that's seeing. Observing is when you're actively analyzing what's around you. Do you understand the difference? Let me know in the live chat. So when you are observing, you are actively checking what's around you. That's not the same as being paranoid. Let's make that clear. Paranoia is when you are so stressed out that you think that everyone's after you. Well, that's not the case. That's paranoia. Paranoia is when you have become mentally ill by too much stress. I'm not talking about paranoia. Observing is just being active and alert about your surroundings. And here's a secret that most governments know. Most governments out there, or you better say government in general, they know that most people don't observe things. Most people only see. And because they only see, they only notice things that is on their mind. For example, if you would talk to someone about a blue car, okay? Keep talking to an individual about the blue car, and suddenly they go outside. Most likely, they will notice a lot of blue cars around them. But it can be there were just as many red cars around. But because blue cars was on the mind of the individual, when they were walking outside, it were blue cars that their minds noticed. Their minds did pick up the red cars, but because their focus was on blue cars, anytime a blue car was visible, their mind triggers them to pay attention. So we can train our minds to pick up stuff. If you get instruction from your employer that you need to pay attention to foreign names, then anytime you go to documents and you notice a foreign name, your mind gives off a trigger. This is something I need to pay attention to. So we can give assignments to our mind. We can. That's an ability we have as people. We can give assignments to our mind, our own mind. Whether it's good assignments or bad assignments. For example, if someone is convinced that life is short and life will be over before you know it, then their minds are shut down for any type of abundance around them. Anytime there's anyone saying anything negative, the mind picks it up. Why? Because that's instruction the mind has received from them. But if someone is positively minded and they're only interested in hearing positive things, it can be that 100 bad stuff are being said, the mind just doesn't react to it. But when something positive being said, the mind is triggered. So just like we individually can give our own minds assignments, our minds can also be programmed by the people around us. And it happens most of the time. For the first few years of your life, you were programmed with your environment. You just downloaded everything around you without any filter. Once you're in your teenage years, you have a basic filter of how you can filter things. And then when you live a bit longer, now you can examine and reflect on what's in your mind and reform it or renew it when possible, or when required. So our minds are quite powerful. The environment can program our minds, and when you are past your teenage years, you can also, to some extent, program your own mind. And here's what it comes down to. Most people don't check how they've been programmed by their parents, by their surroundings, by their culture. They don't check how they were shaped. So when they are in their teenage years, they seek validation for how they were raised. And that is very easy. You just have to join other people who are airing the same opinions or the same expectations as you, and you feel comfortable. You feel familiar to them. And that's what most people do. Yes, that's comfortable. It's what people naturally tend to do, but you haven't examined how you were programmed. Your mind has been programmed a certain way. But what if the way your mind was programmed is harmful to you? Then you've joined other people that will enable this harm on your life. And that's a situation where many people are in because they don't observe things. For example, let's say now that you enter, let's say you are in a public space near a fountain, and you see a family coming by, and the mother is screaming at the children with anger, and you think, what the hell is this? Why is this woman screaming against a child like that? And the father is walking by, and the father doesn't do anything. He's kind of absent. Let's say you see this, and let's say now 15 years later, the child was 4 years old, and now it's 15 years later, child's now 19, and you encounter that same child, but now, of course, not a child anymore. He's an adolescent now, and now you know that this guy tends to be very businesslike. It tends to be very shocking when he speaks to you. Now, because you saw him when he was 4 years old, the mother screaming at him and the father doesn't do anything, now you understand why he developed this attitude of being very sharp when he speaks to people. And everyone around him is thinking, why is this guy so harsh? Why is this guy so insensitive when he talks to others? Now you know where it comes from. That is how he was shaped. When he was a child, the mother nor the father were sensitive towards his feelings as a human being. So he never learned to value his own feelings. And because he never learned to value his own feelings, he cannot value the feelings of other people. That just doesn't cross his mind. So he operates like a robot when it comes to talking to other people. Very businesslike, very strict, not much empathy. Does that mean he's a bad guy? No, but that's how he was shaped. He was shaped the wrong way. But the people around him that he calls friends are enabling this wrong programming. So this guy may think he is advanced in life because he manages to get things done quickly, but no. Most people are complaining about how insensitive he is, and indeed he is insensitive. And because he doesn't have a criminal record, because he has good grades in school, because he has a job, he may think he ended up well. But anyone who observes him would realize, you didn't end up well. And if you didn't see him as a little boy being screamed at by the mother, you wouldn't have figured out how he ended up that way. So, but this is an extreme example, I know, but all of us have been shaped. Because as a human being, you came out of a woman as a helpless creature that was crying and couldn't do anything, and you grew. And little by little, you began to walk, talk, do all this other stuff. This is how all of us came into the earth realm, all of us. Adam was the only one who came right from the hand of God as an adult. All of us began as a spermatosis that fertilized an egg, grew into a fetus, was born, and then we had to actually learn to walk, talk, and do all of that. So all of us were helpless, defenseless creatures when we came into the earth. All of us. So you didn't begin as an adult with abilities. None of us. So all of us were shaped. And how you were shaped is not anything you could help. You were shaped by the environment. So that's not your fault if you were shaped the wrong way. No, absolutely not. And anyone who blames you for being shaped the wrong way, they're out of their minds. However, if you were shaped the wrong way, it does affect you and others. So it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility to look for improvement and to look to become better. But to do that, you need to self-reflect and face the fact you were shaped the wrong way. And let me tell you one thing. I don't care how kind, how Christ-centered your parents were. We all grew up in the world, so the world shaped us the wrong way, all of us. First of all, we were born in sin, in a fallen state. That could only have been rectified by becoming born again. So that alone is something we need to be renewed from. And apart from that, we all were raised by the world or by society, and society is based on hoaxes. So all of us were shaped the wrong way, one way or the other. Anyone who claims that they had a very good background and they have nothing to reflect on, they're delusional. Really. So go back to the example I gave of that guy who was screamed at as a little boy by the mother and the father in public, humiliated. As a child, he couldn't handle it. While he grew up, he never learned to be sensitive to his own emotions and his own feelings. So as a young man, he was quite harsh and without empathy towards others. He was not a narcissist. He did feel empathy for others, but he never learned how to express his feelings and empathy properly because his parents were so defective. And the people around him saw it, but they didn't intervene. So it isn't just his parents that messed him up, it's also the environment that enabled the parents. Now that guy, is it proper for him to give coaching on how to communicate with people? Let me know in the live chat. Is it proper or wise to let him give coaching lessons on how to communicate with other people? Let me know in the live chat. For those who have been here already, what's your answer? Someone says no. Okay, what does the rest say? I can repeat it after I got the answers. Then I'll continue. Is it proper for this guy who was shaped in this way? No, indeed, he can't. Why? Because he was shaped the wrong way. So the only communication he knows is he doesn't know how to communicate. He only knows how to be aggressive to get what he wants. He thinks that's communication, but it's not. So he needs to be delivered and renewed himself. But let's look at it broader. What if it's not just an individual who has been shaped the wrong way? What if it's a whole community that's been shaped in a toxic way? In this case, because the toxicity is normalized, almost nobody will notice that there is a defective behavior going on. But it's still there. For example, if you have a community where there was this civil war, and after that, the people that survived the civil war, nobody dared to even speak about the horrors of the civil war. When those people have children, they will transfer this tension to the children, that you don't speak about sensitive topics at all, because the parents are afraid that may lead to another civil war. Now, let's say that children never experience a civil war. Those children, because they were raised in such a shocking environment where people were so afraid to talk about sensitive issues, those children will turn into adults that always avoid sensitive issues. And when they have children, the third generation, who never experienced a civil war nor any type of military conflict, they will also have this anxiety about sensitive topics. And if you are from that third generation and you mention sensitive topics, people tend to turn on you and call you rude. Guys say it's not polite to talk about these things. Why not? Look, when you were shaped the wrong way, you need an outsider without any investment in situation to reveal to you that you were shaped the wrong way. And here's what it comes. A lot of people just want to be around folks that are similar to them. So that's why they will never realize they were shaped the wrong way. And here's what it comes down to. When you're shaped the wrong way, and you just don't know you're shaped the wrong way, demons have an advantage over you. Demons can use you and trick you into danger when you are not even aware you were shaped the wrong way. So can it not be that some of the cultural attitudes people hold high are really unhealthy coping mechanisms that your ancestors learned and has been passed down to you? For example, there is this prohibition that you should never ask a woman her age. You can ask a man his age, but never a woman. Why is that? Because since the ancient Greeks, there has been this attitude that if a woman is above the age of 30, she's useless, sexually as well as for community building. And throughout the centuries, other cultures adopted this idea that after 30, a woman is not valuable nor attractive anymore. And females are designed to have psychic income from the community. So mental and emotional sponsorship of the community is the basic need of the female mind. So the female is very anxious to be considered useless. And because there's an attitude in the culture that the older a woman is, the more sexually useless she is, that's why, to prevent worldly women from escalating in fright and causing trouble, people can make the prohibition, they have to ask a woman her age. So there's a leeway in which they allow women to deceive others about her age, so that she doesn't have to face her own quote-unquote decline. That's where the prohibition comes from. But a lot of people don't ask themselves, why is it forbidden to ask a woman her age? Why? Because once you do that, you will trigger this unhealthy expectation of the community in which women are told you're only valuable between ages 17 and 24. After that, you begin to decline, and a lot of men don't want you anymore. Or as they would say in some YouTube communities, your sexual market value decreases. But if people never question this prohibition, they will never realize the dark mentality that's behind it. So because they don't question it, the dark mentality remains, and dark mentality will be transferred to a next generation again. So the same conflicts will happen in a new generation, but with different people. So some of the cultural attitudes that we embrace are really defective coping mechanisms that our ancestors should have evaded. One of such things is beating children, either with belts or with shoes or whatever, or with bare hands, just to teach them to be respectful. Respectful still means you give validation to older people. Hold on a minute. If you're an adult and you're in a supermarket, are you going to scream at people to get what you want? Or if someone doesn't hear you, are you going to smack them so they listen to you much better? No, right? You wouldn't do that. So why is it okay to do that towards a child? Oh, because a child can't defend himself, so you're teaching people that if you can't defend yourself, others have a right to escalate against you. So what do you think is going to happen to those children when they're older? They're always going to be anxious to check whether nobody can escalate against them. That's also a coping mechanism that should have been forfeited a long time ago. And in some countries, you can even go to prison if you treat children in a horrible way. And I agree with that. So, the blind leading the blind. If you're not aware, you were shaped the wrong way. And if the people around you aren't aware of it because they're shaped the wrong way also, then you have a bunch of blind folks thinking they can see. Now, it's one thing to not be able to notice you were shaped the wrong way, because then you're still innocent of the fact that you're bringing forth pollution, because, hey, that's how you were shaped. But if you are aware that something is not right with you and you refuse to self-reflect, now, no matter if you're aware what it is or not, you are blameworthy because you willfully keep yourself in darkness with the risk of endangering yourself and others. So, as long as someone is not aware that they are defective, they're not guilty because they were shaped that way by the community. But the moment they become aware or they're made aware and they refuse to be constructive about it, from that point on, they become blameworthy. And it's from that point on that they become narcissistic. So there are people out there who need help, and there are people you need help to be delivered from. Some people out there need deliverance. Some people you need to be delivered from. Some people out there are endangered. And then you have people who are dangerous. That's a big difference. Do you understand this difference? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know if you understand this. So, when people are made aware that something is off, what do they often do? Okay, let me explain dangers and endangered. Let me give you this. If there's a building that's burning and the people trapped inside the building and they can't get out, they are endangered. But someone walking around with a suicide vest, they are dangerous. That's very obvious, those two differences. Now, in daily life, it goes like this. When someone is traumatized or shaped the wrong way, and they have no idea of knowing it, then they're just endangered because their behavior is self-destructive and may harm them and others. But they're not evil people. So they're not out there to cause harm and to escalate against others. So they are endangered. But a narcissist or a reprobate just wants to escalate just to get attention. They want to be relevant at all costs. They are dangerous. Yes, the sinner is endangered like we all were. The wicked, so the sinner that persists in irreality, they become dangerous. Now, when a community realizes that something is off about them, what do they often do? They look for an expert to inform them what goes on. Now, to some extent, there's nothing wrong with this. But what often happens is that the expert who informs them is himself also defective. So what you end up having is that you have an expert who is defective himself, leading other defective people. And how is this going to work? The expert is often narcissistic, and the expert points out facts, but the expert doesn't lead them to the truth. So let's say there's a lot of youth criminality in a country. A lot of young men and women commit crime, robberies, burglaries, or they fight on the street, causing trouble and all of that. Let's say people want to listen to a police chief to figure out what goes on, or they listen to sociologists or that are hired to talk about it. If those people are not delivered themselves, that they may mention facts about why there's so much criminality amongst the youth, and they may point out that it's because of broken families. But here's the thing, why are there broken families in the country? How come there's so many broken families? Oh, because people have wrong sexual expectations. Aha, that's the root, wrong sexual expectations. But often those experts only see the broken families. But how come those families are so broken? How come there's so many broken families? They can't point out the root because they're blind themselves. Because they themselves likely have defective sexual expectations. So they can't even see about themselves that they have defective sexual expectations, let alone see it within the whole community. So someone can be an expert, and there's nothing wrong with listening to an expert. But even when you listen to an expert, check who the expert is. Is he delivered himself? Look, if it's about cars or about computers or about cameras, you can listen to the expert, because that's not something that relates to spiritual safety or anything like that. But when it comes to actual spiritual safety and relationships, check whether the individual is delivered or not. If they're not delivered, this can still give you valuable information, but the valuable information must be put in the right context. If they are delivered, then you can listen to them fully. Too often, people don't check the experts that they're following. So people may say there are many broken families. Okay, and then people say that's why marriages must work. But what the sexual expectations that people have about marriage is wrong. So as long as that's not addressed, it's still going to be broken families. So you remain in the same vicious cycle. People have wrong sexual expectations, which leads to destructive marriages. Destructive marriages means for traumatized children gather together and escalate. Then you have the whole cycle over and over again. So that's why it's important to observe and not just to see things. A lot of people see what goes on, but they don't observe what is going on. Look at that. A lot of people see what goes on, because you can only see what happens at the moment. A lot of people don't observe what is going on. When you are able to observe and you can see the processes that are working out, that are playing out in the community, you are far ahead than any expert. That's true, Dev. A lot of people don't want to come in constructive solutions that will benefit the people for the long run. Just want to complain about the situation, just upset with the situation, and they want relief from the situation. That's what most people want. And that's why they end up with experts that lead them astray. So a lot of people ask, how could Nazi Germany happen? How could the Nazi oppression happen? Some people even ask, how could the First World War happen? How could the bloody revolution in China happen? A lot of people ask this question, how can so much bloodshed in a mass scale happen? And the public simply complied without realizing what they're complying with. Now you know. When you don't uproot the root of the bad issue, that same bad issue will escalate further and further. And it's one thing we as saints need to understand. A lot of folks out there are not ready to face the fact that we're shaped the wrong way. They're not ready to face the fact that they're not as good or effective as they think they are. They're not ready to face that their parents, as well as the people they grew up with, deforms them. They're not ready to face any of this. So consequently, they're not able to participate in solutions. But what do they want? They want an excuse for how they turned out, and then they want to be built out from the consequences of not looking for solutions. So they're not looking for solutions because they don't want to face the fact that they are defective. They're proud, But this still leads to pollution, but they want to be built out from the pollution that comes forth. So everyone complains about the pollution, but they don't want to realize that they are the source of the pollution because they're not willing to humble themselves and receive solutions. So understand these things. A lot of people out there just want to be built out. That's why they vote on corrupt politicians. Have you ever wondered why people keep on voting on politicians of whom they know they are corrupt? It is because they want someone to bail them out. That is what they want. They don't want someone that will hold them accountable. They want a sensational preacher or they want a sensational politician to do the dirty job for them. Look, if you've been stabbed and you're bleeding, someone must tell you, yo, man, you're bleeding. Look at that. And show you the blood streaming out of the wound. That's very uncomfortable. But they need to tell you you're bleeding. Because if they keep their mouth shut and keep on bleeding, eventually you'll fall down and you die because you've bled to death. If they're truly decent people, if they're truly good people and they are concerned with you, they will tell you, listen, you need to go to an hospital now because you're bleeding. Someone stabbed you. No, it's not your fault. I'm not blaming you, but you still need to take responsibility and accept that you need help because you're bleeding. But what's the attitude of the common individual out there? If they're bleeding, you shut your mouth and make sure they're comfortable. So a lot of worldlings out there prefer to bleed to death than to have you tell them, hey, you're bleeding, you need help. It's very disturbing. That's how a lot of folks are. And someone, Nicole asked, is it bailing out or blaming? She said, I asked my cousin about why he still votes and get the impression that he felt that would help him justify hating the other side, which that's true. Worldlings often build themselves out by hating on someone else. That's why wherever you go in the world, there's always this contention of someone doesn't like someone else, always something they don't like, or always someone that they can't stand. They use blaming someone else as a bailout. Look, if you've been stabbed, the one that stabbed you is to blame. Absolutely. The people that allowed him or her to stab you are also to blame. Absolutely. But that doesn't matter who is to blame. You're bleeding. So what's relevant is that you get the help so the bleeding stops. But in the world, when they're bleeding, they want someone to blame for the bleeding. Even if the individual you blame is to blame, and you're justified in blaming them will not undo the fact that you've been stabbed. It will not undo that you're bleeding. It will not. But that's how worldlings are. They want someone to blame, whether the individual is blameworthy or not, so that they don't have to deal with the fact that they are wounded and that they are deformed. That's how they often bail themselves out. For example, you may have Democrats mentioning the inconsistencies of some of the Republican Party. And it can be that they are correct. It can be that the Republican Party in the United States has so many defects in it. But it doesn't matter how many defects the Republican Party has. The reality is you are dealing with a country with a lot of issues that have been ignored for a long time. Even Democrats ignored many of the issues. But by focusing on the faults of the Republicans, by focusing on that, they can avoid dealing with the issues that have been ignored. And the same, that also happens the other way around. And here's the thing, you can't heal yourself. You can only seek healing or seek help. I need to correct that. Someone says, so we heal the wound. No, you can't just say, so we heal the wound. That's not how simple it is. The only option you have is to seek healing and to seek for deliverance. That's the only responsibility you can have. Because if you would be able to fix yourself, God would have told you to fix yourself, but you can't. So for the community to blame you for how you've turned out without offering a way out, that's pride. They just want to scapegoat you to feel good about themselves. To expect people to be pleasant and comfortable all the time, no matter how they were raised, that's narcissistic. You can only expect someone to want better if they came from a bad environment, but you cannot expect them to be without any traces of ever being wronged or harmed just because it pleases you. That's wicked. But that's how a lot of folks are. They expect to be unbothered by the things that happen in the world, and they want the best from you at all costs. No, that's not correct. And believers need to unlearn that stupid attitude, expecting everyone to be at ease and pleasant to you, despite realizing that you're in a fallen satanic world. How do you expect in a fallen satanic world that people are raised properly and that people are raised in a pleasant and great way? Not going to happen. And you were delivered from the world yourself. So how can you expect people who are still in the world, who are not delivered, to be pleasant and fun all the time? Are your expectations even in line with Christ? So also we need to check ourselves. So in daily life, you observe what goes around you. Don't just see what goes on, observe what is going on. And once you notice that there's an inconsistency that folks are not willing to admit, then you know now what the trigger point in the community is. Now you know which conversations to avoid. Now you know what topics to avoid when talking to other people. Every community on the earth has issues that they don't want to face. So every community has its violent triggers. Every community has certain topics, if you mention them, you get anger from the public. That's why it's quite important when you're in a community to check what type of community it is, to know a little bit about their history, to know a little bit about the composition, about the compilation of the community. Too often, because worldlings are so self-centered, they don't realize that they themselves have a tunnel vision that they operate in. So when they go to another community that's not similar to them, they may act in a way that may cause offense or arguments with other people. And they think, what did I do wrong? Listen, maybe you didn't do anything wrong, but realize you are in a fallen world. So every community at least has something they want to address. So it would have been more constructive for you to realize you're going to another community, check what's going on in that community, and adapt to the situation of that community. I'm not telling you to agree with the community, but you have to adapt to the condition of that community as long as you're dealing with that community. But don't you know that a lot of people can't do this? Admitting that you have a tunnel vision and stepping out of it. A lot of people have difficulty doing this because their whole lives their tunnel vision has been confirmed with their environment. And that's what society is. Society gives you a tunnel vision for you to hold on to. And when you don't agree with this tunnel vision, you're punished. So most people out there have difficulty observing because they themselves are in a tunnel vision. And if they admit they're in a tunnel vision and they do observations, they still have difficulty adapting. That's why most people end up holding on to patterns and cycles. And that's exactly where demons want them to be. By the way, that parable of bleeding, it leads to energetic bleeding first. It was a physical example that I used, but it relates to energetic bleeding. It relates to daily life. Sending peace ahead will work in this situation. If you're going to another community and you send peace ahead of you, you shut down a lot of violence beforehand. In that case, you may not encounter, those triggers may not go off in such an intense way, but you still are dealing with the community with denial. So after sending peace ahead of you, take some time to examine the community you come in. And if you don't have books or any history material, just observe and listen more to other people when you walk in. So you will learn what it is you're dealing with. All communities on the earth have wounds, collective wounds that they don't want to address. All communities. So all communities have taboos. All communities have backwards expectations. So don't think you can just go anywhere and find the right community. It's not going to work. All believers came from defective communities. All believers, because the world itself is defective. So always send peace ahead of you and observe when you enter a situation. If you got a job at the company, observe the first few days when you're at the company. Don't just begin to talk and make friends with your colleagues. Observe first what the type of company it is. It can be that in a company, there's a type of witchcraft that goes on. A lot of people don't dare to speak up their mind. And now you come there and speak up your mind. What's going to happen? You're going to go in the center of affliction. So when you enter the business, or let's say the company, check around you first, observe, and then you notice what you need to bypass. Well, if you walk by faith, likely you will not end up in a workforce where there's witchcraft going on. But anyway, just so that you know, too often people enter a situation with their own expectations, and because they're so inflexible, they expect that people have to understand where they come from. Listen, even if people understand where you come from, that doesn't change that you're not where you came from. If you came from Britain and now you are in, let's say, in Mozambique, you are from Britain. Okay, that's where you were raised. That's how you were shaped. And in Britain, people tend to be a little bit reserved with expressing how they feel if their feelings are not going to be appreciated. Well, it can be now that you are somewhere in Mozambique where you don't even say when you don't agree with something. You don't even express that you're not in agreement with the group. It's true that you came from Britain. Everyone recognizes that, but you are in Mozambique. And in that place, in Mozambique, that's how people are and that's how they operate. You don't even admit that you are not in agreement with something. So if you are from Britain and you reveal indirectly that you don't agree with something, you may be perceived as hostile. When people perceive you as hostile, they'll take action against you. So by realizing what you're going to be involved with, and by adapting, practically, you avoid a lot of stuff. And this is why narcissists always fail eventually. Because narcissists are so focused on what they want that they're so inflexible to adapt to what others want. So narcissists are not very smart. Narcissists are not really that intelligent. They're actually quite dumb in their attitude. Why? Because they sabotage themselves all the time. And they're not even aware they're doing it. They're so delusional that they think that they can bend consequences in reality, and they can't. So do you understand now why observation is so important? Let me know in the live chat. And this is why worldlings often never get the help they need, because they're so stuck to that tunnel vision that they're familiar with. A lot of folks out there, I'm being very frank, when you come with real solutions, they get upset with you. Because that means that they need to admit that they don't have a solution and that they don't got everything under control. Pride, it's a very dangerous thing. And worldlings have a lot of pride. Sometimes they know they are wrong, but admit they're wrong means they need to concede to other people. And that means losing grip on a situation. So they prefer to retain the grip on the situation at all costs, even if it makes them look ridiculous. So always check what you're dealing with. Don't just walk into a situation. As I mentioned before, I wouldn't make my live streams too long. This live stream is almost 1 hour long by now. Are there any questions? Let me know in the live chat. Are there any questions? If there are no questions, I will... Hold on. If there are no questions, I will shut down. Hold on, there's one question over here. No. We were all endangered people, all of us. All of us were endangered people. So for us to avoid endangered people, that's not even possible, because most people on the earth are endangered anyway. Because most people are not even born again. So you can't say, let's avoid endangered people. However, you do keep them at a safe distance when you notice that the danger that afflicts them may harm you. So use natural sense. Okay? But dangerous people you should avoid. That's not even something to negotiate about. It's not negotiable. Okay, a wrong sexual expectation can be, and this is a common thing, that a lot of women expect a husband or a long-term sexual partner to have them on their minds all the time. First of all, no man should have a woman on his mind all the time. He needs to think about himself also. He needs to think about his children. He needs to think about his relatives. But if a female expects a man to think about her all the time, if she expects that his whole existence must revolve around her, then she is out of her mind. Then she's narcissistic and possessive. There's one type of a wrong sexual expectation. Another wrong sexual expectation can be that you have men who don't realize that females are built a different way by their Heavenly Father, emotionally, mentally, and because of that, they don't honor God's design, and they expect a female to share fully in all that afflicts them. The thing is, the man is designed to lead. He doesn't have all the answers. That's why he himself is led by God. Because what happens then is that men then begin to treat their wives as their big mothers to relieve themselves of issues, and then this causes disharmony in the relationship. So there are many, many weird sexual expectations people have that are not addressed. Good for asking this. Well, that's it for this live stream. Please replay it. It's less than an hour. Keep in agreement with Christ and be at peace.